This is In the Trenches, broadcast 29.
Welcome to In the Trenches, where entrepreneurs, artists, writers, designers, inventors, warriors, and leaders share their stories of doing the hard, creative work that impacts all of our lives. Let the journey inspire you to do something worthwhile, build something bold, and create your life's work. And now, your host, Tom Morkis.
Welcome back, everyone, to another broadcast of In the Trenches. Today's guest is Liam Veitch, the founder of freelancelift.com. And Liam is also the author of this soon-to-be-released, and as of the posting of this podcast, it should be in its launch, a book called Stop Thinking Like a Freelancer, The Evolution of a $1 Million Web Designer. So we're going to dig into Liam's backstory a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about freelancelift.com, and then I want to focus on his book and how he's launching it and the story behind it, the fact that he got to $1 million as a freelancer, which is pretty incredible. So Liam, thanks so much for being on the show with us today.
No problem, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I did a quick intro. I don't think it does you justice at all. So tell us a little bit about your background, man.
So yeah, I mean, as the title suggests, $1 million web designer, the caveat that I always put in front of that is, this is cumulative over that 3-year period. I mean, that 3-year period started obviously 3 years ago in 2011 when I set up a freelance business alongside my full-time position. So the kind of backstory to that is that I only ended up in that full-time position after being a failure as a freelancer. So in 2009, I threw in the towel and I was done as a freelance designer. And then I went to join a multinational corporate. So at the place where I was at there's 400 plus employees. And it was something that clicked as that kind of career started to develop, things that I was missing last time around as a freelancer. So just big business principles. And I kind of realized that some things big business is great at, freelancers and small businesses in general suck at. And then the other side of that is the things that small businesses are great at, corporations aren't so great at, so agility, love, care, and passion, and that kind of stuff. So what I wanted to do, and this took me the penny dropping in a sort of an all-hands meeting, it took me to think, okay, well, what would happen if you mashed those two worlds together? That was when I started again. I made a vow to start this thing again and do it properly this time. And that was, as I say, 3 years ago. And in the time, it's been a bit of a whirlwind. I've picked up so many things and implemented them all in this business, and it is really bearing fruit. So what I wanted to do in this book was lay out all of that. I've got some pretty unique points of view on that are all, again, backed up with what's happened in those 3 years and, from chatting to other freelancers. So yeah, my background is that really. I've been in business for most of my adult life. First business was aged around 19, so I've only ever had that one full-time position. So I had a unique point of view insofar as I was looking at the things that the other zombie employees, as I call them, were just not looking at. They didn't really care too much for the business's mission or the values or its vision and where it wanted to go. And as a result, they're probably going to still be at that company now. And that's where I think I've been able to steal some of that knowledge, steal some of those big business principles and really break them down and put them into practice for small businesses and freelancers. So about a year ago, I established freelancelift.com to just tell that story, because that was something that was really missing my first time around as a freelancer. The difficulty is with the freelancer space as it relates to content and blogs and things like that is that they're all framed within that context of being a freelancer. So as freelancers, we often feel that we're somehow exempt from that word business, and that's really due to our status really as a lone ranger. And in some ways that keeps us tied to this, what I would call so-so freelancer advice and chasing ambiguous words like growth, which when you're not achieving growth, you feel like you're treading water. But, a lot of times when I ask people, when they ask me this question, I feel like I'm treading water. I come right back to them and say, well, how do you really know how you're doing if you've not got clear objectives and goals in place? So what I wanted to do was break down all of my knowledge and put that into a book. And that's kind of taking us up to present, really.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the path to 1 million. That's no small task over the course of 3 years, especially for a freelancer, when I think a lot of freelancers, and I know you write about this and you speak to this, struggle with, getting paid what they're worth, so to speak. So tell us a little bit about that path.
Yeah, it really started when I figured out that, look, as businesses, your clients aren't hiring you because you're a designer, developer, marketer, writer, or whatever. They're hiring you because they have a business problem. Not only that, they're going to look for the people that are solving that problem already for people. So if you can be the specialist, if you can serve that specific need, and if you can do that, even for a small pool of clients, then you've got immediately the chance to build 10 times more. So the path I originally started down was for the music industry. So I was a web designer for the music industry, and a lot of freelancers, and this again goes for most small businesses actually, feel that somehow they're missing out by narrowing the pool of potential clients. But quite the opposite is true. If you have only literally got a pool of 200-300 people around the world that you could go after, then really, if you're that go-to guy for that particular space, then you've got pretty much a blank check really that you can begin to request from people. So the path to that $1 million really started in understanding that it's all about specificity, and not only that, understanding specificity and how that applies to what somebody's pains are. So I have this pain. If you can articulate that better than they can, then you've got an instant position of authority, and you can use that to your advantage when it comes to laying out a price and a cost. So one of the things that I teach, and I've got a short book on this, it's called Hourly Rates Don't Matter, is that everything is based on perception. A client's perception of what value you're going to bring to the table is everything. So I make the comparison between what I call the labourer and the partner. So a labourer is the guy or gal that you go to on Fiverr, you spend $5, you tell them specifically what to do, they deliver that, and everybody's kind of happy with that situation. What a partner will do is, in the outset, not really even talk costs. Say, okay, well, talk to me. What are your problems? And understand that it's not really a one-hit thing. This is a long-term, mutually beneficial partnership. So when you're starting down that path, it's vital to start to consider yourself as A, a partner, and B, as valuable, and then lock into a certain section of potential clients. So that's where that journey started. And then from there, it was a case of, building an authority in that space, being the go-to company for that type of activity, and then growing from there into other areas. So the agency, which now kind of carries most of that $1 million, is an agency in the UK that I founded called Tone, and the URL there is tone.co.uk. And what we pride ourselves on is what we call world-class web design. And we frame that in all of our customer-facing literature as, look, there is no point building a website unless it's going to provide value to you as a business and establish you as a market leader. So instantly we built a frame there that can quite conceivably have a larger price tag. So in the first instance, it's definitely specializing in on a certain sector of an audience, then looking to build a relationship that's based on a mutually beneficial partnership. And then from there, being happy to put a higher price tag on your work, because you know that, look, I've done this before for this person and that person. This has generated them X. This is what it costs because I value my services or value my skills. So that's really where it started. And then, from there, it's just about building that average transaction value. We the latest project that we built, I've written about this, was a $50,000 project for just a website. And we never met them face to face. They're based in Southeast Asia. We only actually went to see them and meet them face to face after winning the deal. So even online, it just works. So as I say, that comes from just being a trusted authority in a space, providing value, because they could have gone to freelance.com and probably got the same thing for $1,000. And it's that really of framing yourself such that you command value. Does that kind of answer the question?
It does. Now, tell me a little bit about that, though. I think there's a little bit more to it too than just Well, I think framing is essential for sure, but then you obviously are capable of delivering that as well too. So where's that kind of fine line too? You have to position yourself the right way, but then you have to, I would assume, over deliver on your results and stuff like that. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, how much extra effort does it take to become that kind of market leader, that authority in your niche?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I'll answer that in a second. I think what we have understood is that really it's about the lifetime value of a customer. So I ran some numbers a few weeks ago, and what we found was that over the last 18 months, from initial order to lifetime spend, on average, about 60% are using us again, 60% of customers, and then on average, they're spending over 100% more over that 18-month period. And that, when you are able to almost rely upon that, then building, a pipeline that's going to generate $1 million over the course of 3 years isn't such a stretch, because okay, well, if 60% are going to come again, and if on average they're going to spend 136% more, which they are doing at the moment, then the objective becomes a little bit less. So to answer the question, what we do is build that right into what we're doing. So we always have sort of even a 25-30% contingency, which we don't really tell the client about, but which we allow internally for just over delivering. And a good example actually is at this moment in time, we're building a web project that has, the client has some really specific ideas and have a specific vision about what they want. And in particular, this is for like a homepage slider. So what we're having to do is almost put together a custom photo shoot to get that specific image. We've not billed them for that. We've not included that in the proposal, and we're just doing it. But what we are doing at every point is doing it and then telling them that we're over delivering. It's that thing of, if you ask for more money off somebody, then it just immediately puts them out of joint. If you tell them, look, this wasn't included in the proposal, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this because in the spirit of partnership, we want to make this the best possible site it can be. We want a site that we can all be proud of. And immediately when you frame it like that and tell them that you're over-delivering, tell them that you're not going to bill them for it, then you build an element of reciprocity into everything that you're doing. So they say, oh yeah, okay, I like these guys because they are helping us, and together we will build something that we're all proud of. So I think, again, I would probably recommend, it depends on how much time that you do have, but where possible, always over-deliver, but then it's crucially important that you tell them you are over-delivering. You lay out the fact that, okay, this wasn't in the proposal, but we're going to do it anyway, in the spirit of partnership. If you establish yourself as a partner, if you establish yourself as an expert, you become an asset to that business. So even if it's something that's not in your wheelhouse, they'll come to you and say, yeah, I've got a problem with this and this. If you have answers at your fingertips and you're giving them answers, they're not going to go anywhere again. They're going to come back to you at every point, and they're going to trust you as an extension of their business. So yes, it's over delivery, but it's telling them at every stage that you are over delivering, and then locking yourself in with them as a mutually beneficial partner. And I can't stress that enough, that when clients are building a project, what they don't want is to be told that things are out of scope, out of range, and not in the proposal and things like that, because at the end of the day, they will not come and spend 136% again over the next 18-month period. So over deliver and tell them that you're over delivering.
I love that. And it's funny because the way I understand it when I hear you is you essentially kind of bake in over delivering into the process. So that's
that's right.
It's what when you go into it, you recognize that I guess, suppose when you do the proposal for the client, that you're saying that there's going to be extra things I'm going to do on top of this. And you understand that, and they might not be aware of it. And then that's going to be kind of your, I guess, I don't know what you would describe. I mean, it's just a great touch, though.
It's a tool for building a longer term relationship, and it's not something that you're explicit about, in the outset. What you are explicit about is, look, we're in this together. We're going to bring ideas to the table. We're going to tell you if we think that your vision is not quite correct, and we're going to do that from XYZ experience. That's enough to get you in the door. But what gets you that doubling of spend over an 18-month period is the things that you can't really quantify, is that feel good factor, that the client's experiencing when they're seeing that you're over delivering. And like I said, we don't tell the client about it initially, other than to say, look, we're your partner on this. But then when it's happening, it gives you so much leverage for if you do actually genuinely need to build them more, because if you give them a little bit of an overspend and tell them that you're doing it and then don't bill them for it. And the next time that kind of thing comes around again, and you look at what we've spent so far and you say, look, this is going beyond now. We just need to have a boundary of reasonableness, or that kind of thing. And they're more than happy to kind of go along with that. So it's about over delivering, telling them that you're over delivering, and then just baking that straight into your pricing from the outset. And it's that thing of being a partner. That's the only way that you can start to do that kind of stuff, because if you're so specific and you're taking instructions from a client, then there's really no room to maneuver anywhere within that, especially if your whole price is based on an hourly rate.
Yeah, and I think a bigger piece of this too, or at least an equivalently important piece, is not only you mentioned that it's the enjoyment factor, the wow factor that these clients get, but it's a trust factor too. Because when you not only deliver, but you over deliver, and you do these like you go the extra mile. I think that's honestly, this would be my prediction here, but I'd like to hear what you say about this. But I think the reality is that so many companies and so many, whether it's small or medium size, are really just looking for people that they can trust to do business with. And so when you bake this into your service and how you offer it and how you over deliver, I think that builds trust. That's just an incredible way of building trust.
Yeah. And I mean, there's also a second part to that as well, which is that the higher up the chain you go in terms of like order values and things like that, then the more freedom you have. Funnily, if you're building a website for somebody that has, they have a really specific idea of what they want you to do, and it's going to cost. They've got a budget of $500 or £500 or whatever it might be. They're going to give you a much harder time than somebody that's going to spend $50K, because they trust you to carry out that work on their behalf. And that is ultimately where you should be building towards. I mean, it's not something that happens overnight. For us to get to those levels, it has taken 2 years, 2-3 years to be able to stand in front of somebody and say, you can get it for 1/100th of the price, but what you're not going to get is all of this. And if you can back that up with people that are happy to talk about you, and again, this is where the partnership thing comes in as well, that $50K deal, that hinged really on a glowing testimonial that we received from somebody who we had done a similar job for, that were in a similar space to them, to that. I mean, they were both charities actually, as it goes. So they felt that trust and felt that kind of partnership and credibility from a third party. That only happens if you are, again, over delivering, building a partnership and building trust into that relationship. You can only leverage that if you're doing a really good job of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump into the book. Tell us a little bit about what's actually going to be in this book. Is it these topics that we're talking about right now? Is this what we can expect when we read the book?
Yeah. So back down to knowing where to go and chasing ambiguous words like growth. So growth is too ambiguous. I only use it when it's in a specific context, but often freelancers look around and say, I feel like I'm doing okay, but I need growth. But they don't really pin down what growth is. So there are two threads, really. The first thread is that as freelancers, we feel like, we're somehow exempt from that word business. When, if you look at it in terms of raw facts, we have customers, we have overheads, even as a one-person business. For customers, we have overheads, we have a need to go out in there and pitch our services to people. And we need to make profit. That's exactly the same for a one-person freelancer as it is for Google and Amazon and Microsoft. So by ignoring the big business principles which makes those guys successful, you're ignoring the potential for your own growth. So that's the first thing, understanding that we, as freelancers, and again, this goes for all small businesses, especially online, we should be thinking more objectively about our business, looking for real ways to grow based on facts, data, benchmarking, goals, and aiming towards that. So that's the first thing, that we should stop thinking like freelancers or for as small businesses. We should think like businesses and look at the way that bigger businesses go about things. And the second thing is that not having a clear idea of what growth actually is it growth in revenue? If so, how much? Is it growth in happiness? Is it growth in client quality? All these things can be left up in the air a little bit when you're chasing an ambiguous word like growth. So instead of that, what I propose is a new word, and that word is evolution. We all understand what evolution is. It's continually getting better, continual improvement. And if you can chart your progress through that evolutionary cycle, then you can say, okay, look back at 6 months from now and say, yeah, that's different, that's better. And looking at specific benchmarks and specific data. So it's that really. The first thing is, stop thinking like a freelancer or stop thinking like a one-man band and start thinking like a business, and then stop chasing ambiguous words like growth and instead look for evolution. Evolution is continually getting better. Evolution is exciting, fun, and it ultimately builds momentum because you're continually knocking down small goals. And they really come into 4 areas, really, 5 areas. This is an evolutionary growth cycle because the great thing about it is, and this is why I've broken it into a cycle as such, is that because evolution never stops, once you've made one kind of lap of the circuit, you can go again and build higher goals and targets this time. So the first one is getting evolution ready. So this is just foundations of growth, strategy, vision, benchmarking, looking at where you're going to go. The second one is replacing bad clients with dream clients, or repelling bad apples and attracting dream clients, as I refer to it in the book. And the third one is is more about perception, and that's all this kind of good stuff about being a partner and that we were just talking about then. The third one is just multiplying exposure and building a platform. Again, the top bracket freelancers are all renowned in their space. So when they go on, and again, there's a good example from a guy called Paul Jarvis, who is a web designer for creative entrepreneurs, as he calls them. So what he did was say, okay, maybe these guys exist on places like Forbes.com, Inc.com. So what he did was make it a mission to go and be visible in those locations. So he's visible in those locations. He's putting out great content that's kind of relating back to him and his service. He's pushing people back to his site, and his calendar is booked up till May 2015. And his rate is huge, but it's justified by the fact that it's kind of blocked up for 6 months. So when he opens his calendar out again, he's got no shortage of people wanting to come and use his services because he's been able to multiply that exposure and build that platform. Fourth phase within the book is looking at leveling out the income roller coaster. As freelancers, and again, the same goes really for most small online businesses, it's very much sort of feast and famine, an income roller coaster, as I call it. So the fourth phase is just building predictability into the business. That's looking at, okay, how do we increase the lifetime value of this customer? How do we make it so that we can have money coming in even in the slow weeks by building products and things like that, and generally making it a little bit more stable, because it's 100 times easier to say no to a bad apple client if you know that next week you've got X amount of revenue coming in. If you can stabilize your business in that way, then it means that you're in a much stronger position to work only on projects that you want to work on. So it's vitally important. And the fifth thing is just loosening the reins. Obviously, we're all in business for our own different motivations, but one of them always is freedom. So that freedom often doesn't happen for freelancers when they are starting out or when they're struggling. Often they're working double the amount of hours they would in a job for probably half the pay. So in the fifth phase, once we've got all these other levels achieved, then what we'll look to do is to loosen the reins. So how can we build processes into the business which can take you out of the chain? How can you leverage a remote team? How can you make things quicker, more efficient? And generally, how can you build a business that's going to survive and thrive without you in it, or with you faded out a little bit, And I'm not proposing a 4-hour work week. That's not what we're looking for here, because ultimately I don't see that as being the real goal for a lot of small business owners. Maybe it is if you're genuinely just chasing money and a lifestyle business. But I think in some ways it's less satisfying to do that. So I think a lot of people will be satisfied with 20, 30 hours a week, have lots of time to do nice things and be able to actually go on vacation. One of the key things that freelancers and small businesses struggle with is, look, I've got to be here to do the work, which is going to give me the revenue. So it's not viable to take 2 weeks out entirely, because I won't have a house by the end of that period. So fifth one is just working less while earning at least the same, if not more. And then again, once you've gone through all those 5 phases, then you can head back to point 1, getting evolution ready again and saying, okay, well, what's my next objective? And all this is framed within within clear objectives and building clear goals. So it's a cyclical thing, and it comes from my experiences and the experiences of the 10 or so other freelancers that I've talked to when I've been building this book.
This is awesome. I love this growth cycle and really powerful stuff. So, hey man, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show. Where can people reach out and connect with you and actually get access to this book when you launch?
Sure, yeah. So if you head to freelancelift.com, I'm going to be putting it in the nav very shortly, so you'll see it at the top. It'll just say 1M Freelancer. I think will be the kind of navigational item there. But yeah, it'll be all over the site anyway once we're launched. And for the first 5 days, it's free, so there is absolutely no excuse but to get on it. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Liam, it was great, man. So much valuable content, and I'm going to make sure everything's linked up in the show notes, and I'm going to encourage everybody to download the book. So, hey, man, thanks again for being on the show.
No worries. Thank you.
And that wraps up In the Trenches broadcast 29. If you enjoyed today's broadcast and you'd like to check out the show notes, just go to tomworkus.com/broadcast29. As always, this is Tom Workus. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Thank you for listening to In the Trenches. Your creative work doesn't stop here. Join the resistance, the small but growing army of entrepreneurs and artists putting a dent in the world at www.tomworkus.com. Never fight alone. Join the resistance.